Welcome to another episode of the Untethering Shame podcast. Today, we're diving into a conversation that reaches deep into the heart of self-discovery, authenticity, and the courage it takes to live unapologetically as oneself. Our guest is Juliana Allen, a queer breath and somatic coach dedicated to helping people heal trauma and rediscover their true selves through body-centered practices. Juliana's story is one of profound transformation. She came out as a lesbian in her mid-30s while raising 2 young children and married to a man. Through her journey, she's found her voice, her truth, and a path to live in alignment with her most authentic self. In today's episode, we'll explore the intersections of shame, identity, and healing. She shares with us her experiences growing up with messages that pushed her toward compulsory heterosexuality, the impact of trauma and eating disorders on her relationship with her body, and how somatic and breathwork helped her reclaim her identity. Together, we'll unpack what it means to step away from suppression and into self-awareness, how we can go from hiding to honoring who we really are. We'll talk about the journey of coming out later in life, the fears, the stereotypes, and the reactions that so many face when they reveal a part of themselves, no matter what that part is, that they've kept hidden for years. For her, this episode is a chance to shine a light on what it means to give yourself grace in the process of self-discovery, to unlearn the shame we carry, and ultimately to rebuild a foundation of self-acceptance and love. So join us as we explore her powerful journey toward authenticity and the lessons that we can all learn about finding and embracing our own truth. Oh my gosh, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here.
I know. I am too. Thank you for having me.
I still feel like, so it was pre-COVID when we were sitting in that tea shop.
Yep.
You were pregnant. You were very pregnant at that point. And I'm just like thinking about all the life that has happened since that time. And yet I still feel as safe, excited, and connected to you as I did in that moment. And we've spent like a grand total of like 5 hours together in our lives. And yet I still feel this like at peace and connected and energized talking to you. And so this is a testament, I think, to what you bring into spaces, because it just happens naturally with you when you're in a room.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. God, that feels like not even one lifetime ago. That feels like 5 lifetimes ago.
Yes.
I think I remember though. I remember that. It was so long ago.
Well, and things have changed for all of us. You know, you have another child. I had my child. We had COVID. We had this. You also went through this to me, I talked about it in the intro, is just this journey to, I think self-acceptance feels a little bit limiting. It feels like it's a self-actualization, a walking with the self. Like you really took steps towards creating a life that now I know is more in line with and authentic to who you were. But it's so interesting. And I know we'll get into this, but when I met you, there were so many of those parts of yourself you hadn't yet shared with the world. And yet you still seemed so centered and grounded. And so to imagine somebody at that point that was doing such a good job of suppressing, avoiding, not naming these things, and yet the world is experiencing them this other way, I feel like I just want to go back to that version of you and just like hold her and be like, I promise you, if you tell me, I've got you. Like there's nothing that will change. And so I'm excited to be here now with you, to be able to see you having done that. I'm sure you had people in your life that did that for you, but to actually be witnessing you doing that for yourself. And that's so cool.
I didn't know. You know, like that woman, that you were talking to in the coffee shop or tea shop didn't know those things about herself. I had suppressed it for like ever. And it wasn't even an option for me. And so I think that is a piece that has taken a lot of like self-forgiveness, because, you know, I was married to a man, and like, how could I do that to somebody? Like, I didn't know. And once it all started to unravel, it was like, oh my gosh, like the blinders come off and you just like look back at your life and you just like, oh my gosh, like
Mm-hmm.
all that was pointing to this. But that person sitting in front of you in that tea shop had no idea she was gay.
And that I think is such an interesting piece because, we talk about this a lot of oftentimes it's a conscious suppression,
Yep.
which is honestly, I think less common than the subconscious or unconscious suppression of a
Mm-hmm.
part of the self, whether that is in relation to our trauma, identity pieces.
Mm-hmm.
It's safer to bury it. And if you've been burying it since you were, 4, 5, 6 years old, it's so covered. There's no way to even get to it. And so I'm curious because, we're able to go back and know that person.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing you where you're at now, was there a catalyst that started to bring some of those things out from that sort of buried room of feelings and knowns?
My last kiddo was born in May 2020. And I lovingly refer to that period in my life as the beginning of the end.
Uh-huh.
I had a 3-year-old as well. So I had a
Mhm.
3-year-old and then a newborn baby and COVID. And
Yeah.
I was running a business and things got very complicated in the world, for lack of a better way to say that.
Yeah.
And it just started to unravel. I can remember journaling, like I've journaled my whole life, and I was just writing and I was like, there's something here and I don't want to talk about it. Don't want to say it. I don't want to admit it. Like I know something is off. And at this point, I started to realize it was my sexuality. The majority of women have dealt with sexual trauma. That stuff was starting to like come up again, like because I was just suppressing my sexuality so much. And it all really just started to unravel. And it took me about a year to come out to myself. For me to actually speak those words out loud. And I didn't speak them at first. I wrote it down, right? Like, I think I'm a lesbian. Like, oh my God, I think I'm gay. And then it took me like another year to come out to my spouse.
And as you were saying it, when you wrote it down, because you're beautifully articulating that things aren't just like you wake up and you're like, here it is, but you're like, okay, there's a knowing, which, likely some of that skill to even be aware of that is a testament to some of the therapy and the work that you had done up to that point to even know.
For sure.
But then
For
it
sure.
went from that to, okay, it's there. I know I don't want to say it. Then you start playing around with saying it. Are you rejecting yourself? Are you judging yourself? What's coming up for you as that part is going down?
Guilt. A lot of guilt and a lot of anger towards myself. I didn't want that. I wanted the life that I had built for myself. So I struggled with an eating disorder for a very long time growing up. And I never thought I'd be able to have kids, have a family, have a house, have all of those things. And so I wasn't ready to let it go. And I thought like there was no reason. There was no reason, right? Like I'm happy. I should be happy. I have everything that I'm supposed to have.
Yeah.
But I was miserable. And there was something inside me that I just like couldn't ignore anymore. And that really came, I think for a lot of people, that's one of the things the pandemic did for us is like all of a sudden, like all your things are like right in your face.
Yeah.
And I couldn't ignore it anymore. Like I didn't want it though. I didn't want to be gay. Like I liked my life.
Well, there's like the layers of like, this represents my recovery. This represents how far I've come. This represents a strength in me to have gotten to this point. Like you're proud of it, even if it isn't ultimately what you wanted. So there's that piece. There's, I don't want to implode my life. That sounds like a shit show waiting to happen. I'm not trying to do that. Like I'm just trying to get through the day. It's COVID. I've got 2 kids. Like this is overwhelming. And then there's, my guess is the third layer, which is any internalized bias any internalized judgment against what it would mean if you were blank, whatever that is. In your case, we're talking about sexuality and a marginalized identity that has to do with that, but it could be whatever comes up for someone. And so you've got all three of those things competing against your authentic voice being like, but I'm allowed to be here. And you're like, but you're
Yeah.
really fucking inconvenient. Could you go somewhere else? I don't want you.
It definitely started as like a little tiny, like the smallest little voice of like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Does anybody else's little voice say that to them? Oh shit, oh shit.
Mine does it a lot. Usually it's fuck, but like same thing. Yep.
Yeah, same thing.
Yep.
And it just became louder and louder and louder and louder. And like, I couldn't, like my body wasn't doing well. Like, when you're like really suppressing your authenticity, like no matter what form, no matter what it is for you, it's like our stories are all so different. But when you're suppressing who you are, it's gonna come out. It always comes out.
So I teach a lot about radical acceptance and this concept of controlling what's in our control, letting go of what you can't. That's a hard concept for people, but the more difficult part, and I still reject this, even though I know it's true and I'm really like to teach it, is the idea of with acceptance is also radical responsibility. And sometimes I hate knowing what I know. Like I think about that as, to be able to set boundaries with someone. I am privileged enough to have an education that is entirely around communication and boundary setting and processing painful feelings. Sometimes I really want to fucking forget that I have that because I want to be the person that's like, I don't know how to do that. I can just like ignore my boundaries or not say anything. And like, I want to be able to complain about this other person and how they're wronging me instead of knowing that I am actively responsible for the ways that I am feeling right now by not setting a boundary. And so you have this, with the knowing comes responsibility. And when we're carrying shame and judgment, that responsibility often gets layered with fear, shame, resentment, instead of empowerment, which is now that I know, I get to choose what I do with this. I get to choose how I move forward. But I'm assuming to you, it felt just like someone came in and blindsided you with a Mack truck. It didn't feel empowering. It felt scary and even more lonely than the loneliness that you had already felt in this life that you didn't want, but you had, and you were telling yourself to be happy in.
Yeah. Bingo. All of that. Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating. I mean, that really wasn't that long ago. I look back and maybe 4 years ago, that it all started to unravel. And like, I look at my life then and I look at it now and I'm like, whoa, like that is remarkable. But looking back at that person, from the time you and I met in the tea shop to May 2020, when everything started to unravel, to a year after that, when I finally was able to admit to myself, like, oh shit, I'm a lesbian, to coming out to my now ex-husband, to getting a divorce. And it's like, wow. It doesn't really feel real a lot of the time because part of me, it's like, I've always been gay. Like, it's not even a thing to me anymore. I'm just like, yeah, like it doesn't even, like, people still want to talk about it. Sure. I don't care. I'm happy to talk about being gay. I love it. But then I realized like, it's been such a journey to get here. And yeah, I just didn't even know. Like, we don't listen to our bodies.
Well, and I'm curious because that's one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, particularly because obviously that's now where you shifted gears with your business, with your professional goals, and how you help people is really about this, getting people in touch with their body. And you've named a couple things that, we can sort of tie the web together, where you had trauma, where your body was taken advantage of, and however we want to label that, sexual assault, sexual abuse, probably some physical abuse as well. If we really think about how both of those kind of get layered together, it's not always about hitting or beating, but just boundary violations with our physical body that aren't even always sexual. On top of that, an eating disorder, which completely ruptures and severs every aspect of connection to our body.
Yeah.
On top of that, I grew up at the same time in the world as you did. And so I know the pressures and the stories and the ideas of how we were supposed to look. I got the same pamphlet with the same checklists of what success and happiness looked like and what we were supposed to do. So you're like, I just want to feel happy and I want to be accepted and loved. And there's this sort of conditional love and acceptance in the world, maybe even in our family dynamics. So all of this, I think, was a ripe way for you to be like, well, no, I don't even think about my body. It wasn't, I know I'm gay and I have to avoid that because people won't accept me. It's my body is just not even a thing I consider. It's safer to function up in the frontal lobe. Like it's safer to avoid emotions, feelings, connection at all costs, because this is where I'm going to be safe.
It was too much. Being in my body was too much for me. I am a super sensitive person. You know, I remember being in therapy. I was maybe 17 or 18. And my therapist said to me, he was like, you feel deep and you feel intensely and you are just a feeler. And I was like, well, I don't really want that either.
Yeah.
Like, this hasn't turned out well for me. I didn't know. I didn't know how to be present with everything that I was feeling. Right. And like, come to find out later in life too, also have ADHD. And it's like, oh my God. So like all my system just couldn't process.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the eating disorder was a way for me to keep my body safe. You know, because I completely disconnected from it. And it was like, well, you're not going to feel anything now because this is too much. Like, I can't take all this input and all this. That is how my body felt all the time. And so why would I know I was gay?
Right.
Like, why would I spent my life disconnected from it because it was too much for me to handle when I was 13 years old.
Right. And knowing that when you build a protection mechanism that you're going to turn to it every time you need protection. And when you've gone through trauma, your sort of threshold for when you're going to enact those defenses is much lower than another person's because you are prepared for all the what ifs that maybe other people's brains and bodies aren't even thinking of. And so my guess is you also, correct me if I'm wrong, but because you're naming that you are a deep feeler, you're very sensitive and aware of other people's emotions, that instead of that then being a connection to you, you got really good at anticipating what everybody else needed and taking care of them, which then allowed you to feel those feelings, but to conveniently stay disconnected and to keep other people disconnected from you too.
Mm-hmm. Safe.
Yeah.
It was very safe. It was very safe. You know, I kept myself very tightly controlled. The eating disorder, whatever, however you want to look at it. It's like, who do you need me to be? And I can be that.
Yeah.
And I was really good at that. It's not that it wasn't true because I feel like that statement has judgment around it and shame around it in and of itself. Like saying, you know, that person when I was 25 years old who X, Y, or Z, like not that it wasn't a true version of myself, but it was not authentic because I was just doing what I was supposed to do.
Right.
Just doing what everybody told me to do, checking all those boxes and being the perfect whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I feel like it comes up a lot where I'll have conversations with people and they're like, so you're saying I can't do these things anymore. I shouldn't do this stuff. I'm like, no, I'm saying it's important to know the motivation underneath it. Oftentimes our goals can look the exact same.
Totally.
It's the relationship that we have with ourselves and our intentions in the process. And so I think a lot for me now, you're describing that like I can adapt and be what everyone else needs me to be. That was very much me. I was a chameleon. I had been shuffled from different family members to different family members, being in a high state of trauma and activity in my life. And I knew how to do that. I knew how to be the person. I had gone to, gosh, I can't remember. It was like 7 or 8 different schools by the time I was in 5th grade. Like I was constantly the new kid. I knew how to play the game. It doesn't mean that now, as I've gotten clear on like, oh gosh, I used to like be the friend that everyone could rely on because I felt like I had to, so that people wanted me around, or I was the one that
Yeah.
did the group project. Like, I'm still going to be the person that I want to be able to be there for you when you need to call me. Or if there's a project,
Mhm.
I'm going to pull my weight. I'm going to put in as much work as I can. The
Mhm.
difference is now I don't believe that my sense of self is dependent on it. And so
Yeah.
if I need to say no, if what I need is starting to call out to me, I'm able to make space for that without feeling like an asshole. And so
Yeah.
for you, it's that piece. Like, my guess is you're literally in a profession where you are holding space for other people and their
Right.
emotions,
Right.
but it's a choice. And it's
Yes.
with you being a part of the equation. Whereas for the first 20 some years, 30 years of your life, you weren't. That wasn't a part of the equation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so we get to this place where you are starting to raise your consciousness around this part of yourself. And it's not just your sexuality, it's all these other pieces that are coming to the surface.
Mhm.
Tell me about all the fears that you had to work through to then translate that into a knowing to an action.
Mm. Fear and shame, I think, are the biggest things I was feeling at that time. And the guilt and the anger towards myself.
Mm.
I didn't want it. I was mad at myself for being gay.
Mm.
It, and it's funny when I say that now, I'm like, oh, honey, I just want to
Mm-hmm.
put my hand on my heart and hold that. I mean, I'm still a mom to two little kids, but at that point I had like little tiny babies,
Yeah.
and it was just like I just wanted to hold them, and like I see, like I just want to hold myself
Yeah.
how I would treat those little babies of mine, and you know, for me it was being able to get in touch with my body was the biggest thing.
Mm.
It sounds so silly, but there's so many women in particular who like, what's your favorite food? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite color? I don't know. Like, we're not taught how to ask ourselves any questions. We're not taught how to know if something is true for us
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and so then as you're choosing
Mm-hmm.
you, if you hadn't been, and again, probably in those very micro ways of maybe not asserting your interest in music, your preference for a restaurant,
Yeah.
your whatever, and obviously the connection to that and the bigger piece, as you started to then bring your knowing of self into the light with other people, were you afraid that they were going to reject you?
Yeah, I was.
And when you think about your kids, was the fear that you were going to hurt them?
No.
Okay. So it wasn't that. It wasn't like,
Mm-mm.
I'm going to do, like a lot of people where they like don't leave a marriage or don't do something because they're so afraid of the impact on them.
They were a big motivation for me to leave my marriage
Mm.
because I wanted my kids to know that whoever they are worth living their truth.
Mm.
So actually, those babies of mine really helped me to leave
Mm-hmm.
because I thought about it. I was like, well, what if there's something that they're ashamed of or don't want to tell
Yeah.
me or whatever? And it's like, no. You are loved no matter what. And guess what? You deserve to be whoever you are.
Mm.
And so there was definitely a part of me that like knew deep down that I could do it. The fear for me was like, I was totally dependent on my ex, like financially. And like, it's like I had a business at that point in time, but it was, pandemic and
Yeah.
everything. That's where the fear was the layers after layer of like,
Yeah.
how in the hell am I going to survive as a single mom with two kids when I had a business?
Yeah.
That's where more of the fear came in. And
Yeah.
honestly, like I wasn't super rejected by a lot of people in my life. I do have to say that I think just in context of the time period of the pandemic and everything. I think I'd already weeded a lot of those people out. That would have rejected
And
me
we'll
for
say
being
also
gay.
just like there's a lot of political shifts, there's a lot of identity pieces, and not that anyone's perception and opinion we're saying judgment around. It's just if that's where somebody was at, you were already maybe conscious of that's if they would reject me, it's actually not rejecting me. It's about a belief system that has nothing to do with me. And I'm not going to take that on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly. Yep.
It's really interesting too. I mean, I feel like our kids, you know, the reason it's safe for us to say something about them, like I want them to know that they should live their authentic truth, their love no matter what. I think about this with my daughter. It's so much simpler to say that because I know that I want to gift her with unconditional love.
Yeah.
Which is not something that we grew up having. And not because our parents don't love us and care about us, but they weren't taught how to do it. There's a lot of conditions around love and acceptance and nurturance that we're all trying to break decades into these cycles. And so we have enough confidence to know I absolutely unconditionally love my child. And I know that if something came up for them, I would want to be there however I could.
Yeah.
The cool thing is you leverage that to have probably in the beginning, it was a false sense of courage because you hadn't bought into it fully for yourself yet. Yeah. But the idea that then you could too experience unconditional love and acceptance. And you had to kind of ride a high that you're like, I definitely might be cliff diving and I might not be able to pull the chute in time. I think there's a parachute when you cliff dive. I don't totally know, but you trusted it enough to make the leap. And my guess is that the fears, the shame, you built up enough buy-in that you could outweigh them enough to at least jump. They were still there, I'm assuming, the whole time.
Absolutely. But it was such a relief. Like when I first said out loud, in my journal that I was like, I'm gay.
Yes.
And then the more I said it and the more I was able to be true to who I was, it was such a relief. And that outweighed any of the fears. Being able to just be who I was for the first time really ever. Looking back, and it felt like I felt free finally.
Yeah. Well, I remember the first time that when I was struggling with my eating disorder, and obviously, we think we're hiding things so much better than we are. I'm sure people knew that I had, all sorts of different things, but particularly an eating disorder because the behaviors show up in different contexts. But I remember the first time I said it to somebody out loud that I knew. I had tried it on a little bit when I was working at the National Alliance on Mental Illness, talking to other people who I knew had struggled. And I was like, oh, okay. See, there's people. It's fine. I respect them. So maybe I could be respected and still be seen as a high achiever or whatever. It's not, people are going to think less of me maybe. But when I first told two of our friends, we were doing a beer tasting place. And we were sitting there sampling these beers and I just said it. I just word dumped right onto them as they're in the middle of their sip. And one of my friends, he's like, okay. And then his now wife was like, what do you need? I said, nothing. I just wanted to tell you. And he goes, okay, how'd you like that beer? And immediately just went right back to the conversation. And it wasn't dismissive. It wasn't we're avoiding this conversation. It was giving me the space, the acceptance. What do you need? Nothing. Yeah. I just wanted to say it. And then immediately going back to the sort of norm that we had. And I remember actually being pissed that I had spent so much time convincing myself that I would be rejected, which now I know is all my own shame, my own story. I was projecting this, but I'm like, well, what the fuck? I could have probably done this work way sooner had I accepted the fact that not everybody's just waiting to reject me. I am not that important to be on everybody's radar that they're always worried about that. But also I'm important enough that what I do is it's not going to be the deciding factor on whether or not people love me and accept me.
I know. It's layer after layer after layer, right? The shame and then the fear and then the guilt and then and then when you finally say it, it's 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 really freeing to be able to stand in your authenticity. And I think where I struggle with that piece is like, I think a lot of us don't know who we are
Mm-hmm.
authentically, you know, because again, most of us that are around in our age bracket, like we're conditioned to be this, be that, be this, like check all those
Yes.
boxes. And if you haven't done the work, if you haven't like gone inside and figured it out, like you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And then there's another layer of shame
Yeah.
and another like,
Yes. Yes. I still have a client now where she's like, I feel like I've been doing this work for so long. And if you ask me the question, who am I still don't know. And I
yeah.
carry so much shame around that. And I think part of it is we've also, because of the checklist system, because of this
Mhm.
idea that things are, I mean, we see it even in the wellness world now. Do these 5 things and you'll feel
Yeah.
better. Here's the quick
Yeah.
fix. I call them the Band-Aid solutions.
Yeah.
So we have this idea that self-love is a hill we summit, and when we get there, we have it and we're there, or whatever else the goal is, boundary work,
Sure.
self-healing, whatever it is. We've got this, it's a linear progression. There are steps that are available. I mean, ChatGPT could tell me right now how I'm supposed to do it and how to fix it. So why am I
Mhm.
not there?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? And I think my guess is that you had to get to a place in this work, but also now what you're seeing in terms of the deeper processing where healing, like you said, it's this layer, it's this iterative process.
Mhm.
There's also the contextual evolution of what my trauma meant to me when I was in my 20s,
Mhm.
not partnered, didn't have a kid, looks way different. And my trauma was all the majority sort of perpetrated through my mom's own mental health and substance use and all of this. So that dynamic of me,
Mhm.
single daughter, mom, single
Mhm.
parent, all my shit got re-kicked up as soon as I had a daughter. Cause
Totally.
now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm re-triggered. I'm re-traumatized. My relationship with her is like, I'm in this whole state of healing, my relationship with my daughter, what it means to be a parent, the shame that I feel if I do anything that could ever make her feel the way that I felt at any point in time. And so but I think when we're like, no, I have to fix it and heal it and be done with it and be perfect, it makes, we can't afford the curiosity to be like, do you actually have to answer the question, who am I? And
Yeah.
instead, could you answer the question, who am I today? How do I
Yeah.
feel right now? What's in my story in this moment? What does this chapter hold? And
Yeah.
does that have to be my forever? And can I be okay when I flail and flap and there's a new piece of information or a new
Right.
part of the self or a new realization that I've been taught not to want, but if I'm being honest, is authentic in me and I need to nurture and love it and learn how to invite it into my story rather than run away from it.
I think we're always changing, you know, and that's one thing that I really love is like if we're continuing to listen and to learn and to do the work, like we're going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also like shit gets kicked up all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting talking to people and they'll like get so frustrated with themselves. Like I'm still dealing with, you know, whatever. We all have our
Yes.
own like
Right.
we all have our things. We all have our things that just kind of keep coming up in
Mm-hmm.
life, right? And I mean, I'm guilty of that too, where it's just like I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that I can't seem to get past this thing.
Uh-huh.
But like I think we have to normalize that too.
Yeah.
Like some days are shit.
Yeah.
Some days are hard. And like some days I don't want to.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look back and I'm like, what the fuck have I done to my life?
Yeah.
Like, I can't say I have many of those anymore as far as like the divorce and the
Yeah.
leaving and everything. But when I first moved out and came out, it was like, what the hell have I done?
Yes.
Like, what have
Yes.
I done? And it's like you just get up and you do the next right thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes things can suck and that's okay.
Well, and I'm curious to kind of think about, my guess is that breath work and somatic work became a really integral part for you in the process. And that's kind of now where you're bringing it in. Because I think a lot about, for anyone listening that isn't aware of this, a big part of this is that our breath is one of our greatest assets. And it's such a regulatory response system we can develop. It's the thing that's going to elevate us. It's the thing that's going to de-escalate us in a moment. Also, that somatic work. Somatic is about connecting to the body, feeling the body physically, emotionally, all those different levels. And so as you're doing this, so often when things are shitty or suck or we're in the midst of that, again, you're here now, you've summited a few different mountains and now you're on another mountain and you're doing something else. You've seen this process. It is easier to be like, no, I did the best thing. But in that moment, we're like, fuck, I just blew up my life. And what if it's for nothing? What if I'm not happier? What if I flail and fail until, the rest of my life is over? The only thing you can control in that moment is grounding down into your body and using your breath as a tool for insight building and a tool for healing and grounding in the moment. And so how did you come across that for you? And thinking about how that would translate to listeners that, again, maybe it's their sexuality, maybe it's like, I'm a people pleaser, I haven't shared this, like whatever it is. Why is that important for them too, to consider?
It doesn't matter what the thing is. That's what I've said so many times. Like whether I'm talking about like the eating disorder or trauma or sexuality, like it doesn't matter what the thing is. It's all like rooted in the same feelings, same like for the disconnection from my body. And so I actually found breath work after I had come out and I was struggling, like massive struggling. Like I was still trying to make my marriage work at this time and also like dealing with all these pieces of I am definitely gay and I'm married to a man. Old patterns and old behaviors were really starting to come up. And I just was like searching on Instagram one day and I was like, whoa, what's this breathwork thing? And then like one rabbit hole later or like 5 rabbit holes, whatever. Again, ADHD. It's like, love those rabbit holes. I was like, well, I'm going to do breath work now. And so I tried breath work and it was like the first time that I was able to get into my body. Get this, feel the feelings. And then guess what happened? They moved and I didn't crumble. That blew my mind. I was like, wait a second. So what you're telling me is that some people can feel shit and it doesn't like just end them. Like, I know I sound dramatic when I say this, but I really felt like I was going to die, right? Where I was like, this is it. I'm a puddle on the floor because I'm feeling so intensely. And that's what breath work, like that was my first experience, not my first experience with breath work, but like the beginning of my journey with breath and somatic work was just being able to feel feelings and like they moved.
Yeah.
And I still feel like I sound so surprised when I say it because it's like, it's a thing. They move. Feelings move.
Well, I remember there was this woman, she was like the grandmother that I feel like everybody, or like the aunt, like the great aunt that I feel like everybody needed in their life. She was like probably 80 at the time she was teaching this course. It was a continuing ed course for therapists. At the time, I was still getting my master's. So I was really new and I was like all dipping my toe in the different fields. And she did all this somatic work and she was talking about emotions. And she's like, they're just waves in the ocean. Do you know how many big waves come through? Do you know how many waves come through in a minute? It is this idea that you get so attached to this one emotion, this one wave. So you avoid it. You run from it. You build a wall. You do whatever it is. And when it can't complete the cycle, that's when it gets big. But it's almost a letdown when we've convinced ourselves that we're going to get stuck there. And it doesn't sound silly when you say it. The number of times I think we get ourselves stuck in, well, what if this happens? And then we turn it into, this is going to happen. And then we just put a period there and we don't continue the story. We don't realize, oh, if this happened, we might actually be okay. If everybody in my life rejected me, if there was judgment, if, I did have people saw my marriage as a failure because I left, if there were all of these things, I might actually be okay. And it sounds like when you got to that place of, my guess is sort of a hesitant curiosity in the beginning that morphed more into a willing curiosity over time. And you're like, wait, it's done? It just like went over there? I don't know.
Yeah.
What? And then you start to go, oh, when I feel sad. And when we see it now, like I watch it with my daughter all the time. Like I am the one that's projecting onto her that she's still sad or mad or upset. She's moved through it because we've given her healthy opportunities to name her feelings, be with it for as long as she needs to and move on. And if she wants to process, great, but like she's fine. And then I'm the one that's sitting there and like, did I give her everything she needed? Is she feeling shame? Is she feeling shut down? It's like, no, because you're the one that's assuming it's got to take up so much space because you still have this fear of of emotions, of pain, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, that happens. And so there's two types of listeners that are listening to this right now, I'm assuming. Probably people all over. I don't want to put everybody in a box, but my guess is that most people fall on one or the other side of the spectrum. One, they know they have these emotions they've been running from. They've been suppressing. They're afraid. Particularly, I know anger and sadness are the most fearful emotions. What if I can never stop crying? What if I'm so angry and I become this violent, angry, terrible person and it never stops? So there's that. There's this fear of going into it. And then there's these people that are like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm fine. I don't have any of these feelings. I haven't cried in 30 years, but like, it's not because I need to cry. It's just, I have nothing I'm upset about. The world is great. I'm fine. And we know that there might be some layers under that. So given the sort of these two ends, how could somebody start to invite breath work in to what they're doing in their daily lives? And how could they create some buy-in around it, given that both sides might have some resistance?
Mm-hmm. I like to sum it up as notice and be curious. Like it really can be that simple. And when I say notice, I mean, notice your body.
Yeah.
And that is harder than it sounds if you have not done that before, right? Like even now. So I'm sitting cross-legged and I'm going to stop for a second and I'm going to realize, hey, my foot kind of is hurting because it's been sitting there a while. So now what? I'm going to move my foot. And like, I probably wouldn't have done that 30 seconds ago because I'm not really like noticing my body.
Yeah.
So that's like the easiest, simplest way to start is just notice and then just get curious. And by get curious, I mean, what do you think your body needs right now? Do you need a drink of water? Do you need to stand up for a minute? Do you need to take a breath? Like, and it's interesting too, because like just in the society and the culture that we live in, it's like we override constantly.
Yep.
Constantly override. And I mean, all genders, but people identifying as women in particular, right? It's like we are big time taught just to ignore our basic needs. And so just notice, like give yourself permission to notice what's coming up in your body. And then just get curious about it. Ask yourself, like, how would it feel if I did this?
Yeah.
And then notice again, like, did that help? It sounds so simple, but it's like really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I love to do that where I'll talk about it as emotion check-ins. Like we're just set a timer or like an alarm on your phone once or twice a day. And when that goes off, just ask yourself, what am I feeling in this moment? And then you just go out. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to do anything with it. Just notice it and move on. And so it sounds like it's that same piece.
It is.
And that invitation to just come into the body for a second and be like, what's my body telling me? And even if you're like, I don't know what my body's telling me. And now you're down a shame spiral. We're not doing that. We're saying, I'm noticing that I'm disconnected from my body, or this feels really hard. Gosh, I don't know what my body is telling me. That's data. That's something we can do something with. Running from it, going down the shame spiral is going to take you 7 layers back and run away from it because it's too scary because you're going to fail. Someone's going to judge you. You're doing this wrong too. And so instead it's, no, we're just, gosh, I don't know what my body's telling me. My body must feel really lonely, or I feel really lonely that I can't connect to it right now. And then move on.
Right. And sometimes when people are having a really hard time getting in touch with their bodies, that's when I will do more like specific breath work. Because
Mm,
all breath work I mean, there's many different varieties, of course, but for me and the way I use it, it's just a tool to get into your body.
yeah.
Like people can get into their bodies in a multitude of ways.
Yep.
Like really, there's a million different ways to get in your body. Breath work is just one of those ways to like even just figure out anything.
Yeah. Yes.
Anything at
Yes.
all. And your body knows. Like your bodies are very, very wise. They know
Hmm.
they know things. They know things.
I know. I've started using that check-in every time I'm going into a space or a relationship where I often leave feeling triggered, stressed, anxious, whatever that is.
Yep.
I've started trying to use that before I go into it, being like, what have I conditioned myself not to listen to? Because whatever that is, it's
Yeah.
the not listening to that that's stopping me from setting a boundary,
Right.
taking a break when I need to, knowing how to turn off some of these shame defenses and instead be
Mhm.
able to be okay being vulnerable, whatever that looks like, and
Yeah.
trying to invite that in. And sometimes I still do the exact same thing that I would have done before. And I still leave being reactive and pissed off or sad or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's even that awareness of knowing, oh my gosh, it's primed in me to feel
Yeah.
this way when I do these things, when I go to these places, like even little things with eating disorder recovery. I know that there are certain foods that I don't bring into my house. It's not restriction. I still eat them outside of my home.
Mhm.
I know that when I think about bringing them in, they make my body feel scared in a way that I'm going to have to spend so much energy to calm my body. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
So it's like, thanks for telling me, body. Here's what I'm going to do to love you, is to not have that and to start to give you the opportunity to know the food itself doesn't have power over you and you can still be safe. I'm just not going to ask you to do it at a 10. We'll do it at a
Mhm.
2 and eat it at a restaurant instead.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing too around all that is like the shame piece is so like loud over
Yeah.
like it just feels like it overarches. Is that the right word? Like
Yeah.
so many different pieces of like, okay, well, I don't know how my body feels, so now I'm going to be mad at myself about
Yep.
that. And it's frustrating,
Hmm.
and then when we do start to listen to our bodies, let's say you work like a 9 to 5 job. Some places have like a set time you can take a break.
Yeah.
But what if I'm hungry now?
Yes.
But like, what if I have to go to the bathroom now? What if my body needs a walk now? And so
Hmm.
there's a lot of different pieces around it. And it's not super cut and dry. So can I tell you a little secret of what I do at work? Because I also have
Please.
like a regular person job, not a regular person job. You know what I mean? Like a
Like the 9
structured
to
job.
5. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a structured job because 2 kids. So I'll be at my desk and I'm starting to like my body's feeling like it needs to do something. So I'll just like look around my environment.
Mm.
I look around and I find something that like just feels good to me.
Hmm.
Like that's my little break. It's my secret little break. So don't tell anybody.
I
I know.
love that.
It's kind of how you like take a little break without actually having to take a break. But just like look around your environment and find something that your eyes like to look at. And
Hmm.
then just notice again how it feels in your body. So like I'm looking at a plant and that feels very calming
Yeah.
and I feel it in my heart. So
Oh.
that's sometimes how I trick the system. That's how I trick them.
Well, I love that because I feel like a lot of what we're kind of wrapping up for people around is one, your authentic self is always emerging and evolving. And so it doesn't mean that if you're a different version or want different things or have different parts of yourself that show up now that you weren't authentic before. It means that you didn't have the information. Maybe it was buried, like in your case, where you're talking about a part of yourself, or
Mhm.
maybe it didn't fit in the context of your life then, but it is showing up now. And so the idea
Mhm.
being to be open to and curious about that sort of evolving self and to invite it into our daily lives. And
Mhm.
a big part of that, I think, is to then rebuild, or maybe for many of us, build for the first time a connection to our body,
Mhm.
both on a physical plane, but also on an emotional and even spiritual component as well. And thinking about
Mhm.
what that looks like to not always be driving through a cognitive lens, but to be driving through some of these other places and spaces, and then beginning to create that curiosity in a way where we can start to ask ourselves questions. We can notice things. We can try things out. Oftentimes, like you're right, there are some places where there's designated break times and designated start and stops times. We also don't know what would happen if we talked to somebody about, hey, what would that look like if I took my break at this time? Or when you actually have autonomy of your schedule, but you keep blocking your lunch break off and then you keep eroding that boundary and taking a meeting, or you're tired and your body's saying, please go to bed. And you're like, but I have to get one more thing done because I wasn't productive enough today. So you don't go to bed. And so we notice, at least for me, every time I come back to it, I'm aware of how sometimes my expectations are misaligned with not only what I'm capable of in that moment, but my values and my wants in a given moment as well. And so that coming back to the self. Okay. All this being said, there are going to be people that are listening to this that are like, oh my gosh, this is so helpful for me to think about. I don't know if there's something under there, or maybe, gosh, I'm spotlight's on. I can see some things are under there. I've been stuck with this myself. And I need to know more about Juliana. I need to know how to connect. Where do they find you? How can they work with you? What is that next best step for them?
Connect with me on Instagram. My handle is Reclaiming Juliana, and Juliana is with one N. So that's it. My whole journey, I think, has been about just reclaiming my authentic self, and that's what I want to see other people do is know who you are.
Yes,
and reclaim this version of you and hold the past versions of yourself with compassion because that's just so important to me.
I love that. And I love that you're ending people with that idea of getting curious about who they are and also being open to the fact that there might be more, there might be something else. And just how do we create that space to allow possibility rather than certainty? And so this is such a beautiful place for us to end. Yeah. I am so grateful to you. I think this has been such an empowering conversation. Listeners, I want to remind you, as these conversations happen, sometimes for each of us, they hit differently on any given day and every given moment. So whatever came up for you today, just give yourself the grace and space to take one thing with you. You don't have to take it all. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to suddenly heal and fix and put all the steps in practice. We're just noticing and being curious. This might even be a great invitation to, as you're wrapping up, just being like, what do I feel right now as I finish listening to this episode? And how can I bring some curiosity to that? I will make sure that there are links to connect down in the show notes with Juliana on Instagram. Of course, we would love to hear what you think about this episode. So send us a voice memo, leave a comment. Of course, share this episode with someone you think could benefit from hearing from it. And we are going to see you back here next Sunday for another episode.